You may have already noticed it. The WWE broadcasts most of its shows live. With the dangerous side of wrestling and the many actors involved, things can easily go wrong and create scenes that we weren't supposed to see as viewers. It's a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise to present you moments that were broadcast by mistake in the WWE. Are you ready to be shocked to learn how Finn Balor fell off the top rope in his match against Roman Reigns? Do you want to know more about the detail that we shouldn't have seen when Triple H was facing a snake? Do you want to discover the little discussion that there was in the ring between Batista and The Undertaker? And are you curious to learn how the Federation reacts when a compromising element is shown on the screen? You have come to the right place, because in our video we will discover together amazing things that have already been filmed but that we weren't supposed to see. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the moments broadcast by mistake in the WWE. Let's go. Let's start with a moment that we shouldn't have seen on the Extreme Rules show in 2021. On that day, when he had been champion for 1 year, Roman Reigns defended his belt against Finn Balor and his demon character. There was still a lot of suspense since Balor was almost undefeated in this role. In a sequence of big domination that was completely crazy with red lights, he seemed on the verge of winning. But at that moment, there's a shock. While he is about to do his coup de grace finisher, Finn collapses. Without us understanding why, the rope has broken and the situation is totally reversed. The tribal chief takes advantage of this moment of vulnerability to destroy him with a big spear for the victory. This is a finish that is still a mystery in Roman's historical reign. We never had the slightest explanation about this incident that enabled him to win. Even if we might think that this is a sabotage implemented by the Bloodline, we could see videos filmed by fans on site that day. We saw a cameraman cutting this rope, which would cause the fall of the demon. Obviously, this moment was not officially broadcast by the company, but the fact is that we shouldn't have seen it as spectators. On the other hand, a mission has been accomplished. Several years later, we are still talking about this mysterious finish, and nothing prevents the screenwriters from following up on it one day. It's April 2012 and the rivalry between CM Punk and Chris Jericho is in full swing. As you may know, CM Punk has always claimed to be straight edge, which means he doesn't drink alcohol and he doesn't smoke anything. Jericho wanted to provoke his rival by using this lifestyle. He was determined to prove that Punk was an alcoholic, which is quite creative, we must admit it. In a scene where he attacked him, Chris spilled alcohol on the Chicago Kid. It will even lead to this little slip-up. That's the magic of live TV, of course. Then he was going to smash the bottle on his head. It was an impressive attack, with one small detail that we shouldn't have seen. If we really pay close attention and watch the scene several times, we notice that the bottle was breaking before touching CM Punk. The explanation behind this is very simple. It wasn't a real bottle at all, but from a sugar bottle. This type of accessories also exists in cinema, for example. It breaks much easier, and above all, they don't cut. So Jericho had started to squeeze the bottle in his hand a few milliseconds too early, which had broken it. Even if the maneuver was a bit botched, and we shouldn't have seen this little mistake, let's still salute the company's creativity for this scene. In WWE, there has already been shocking scenes with snakes, such as when Macho Man Randy Savage was bitten by the reptile. It is a dangerous animal, and the company obviously had to take maximum precautions not to endanger the health of the wrestlers. Imagine that the snake that had bitten the Macho Man actually had no more venom. He even demanded that his owner, his colleague Jake Roberts, first tested on him in front of him before agreeing to be bitten. Years later, there was another scene where the Federation used a snake. It was October 1999 on Monday Night Raw, at a time when Stone Cold Steve Austin was one of wrestling's biggest stars. He was in the middle of a feud with Triple H. While they were fighting backstage at the end of the show, the Texas Rattlesnake is going to do something memorable. You will note that he is nicknamed the Rattlesnake, so the scene that follows is certainly no coincidence. He throws the game in a room. Who comes face to face with a snake? It was a very impressive scene, with the wrestler who was only a few inches away from a reptile whose bite can be fatal. Except that there was a detail that was filmed, and that shouldn't have been. At the moment when Austin had just swung Triple H in this room, looking closely we can see there is a window right next to his head. Of course, seeing it only once and live, we would notice it less. In reality, the room in which the snake was had a glass window in front to protect the wrestler, an understandable security measure. It hurts the scene a little bit, but it was still very entertaining and brave. We are at the Clash at the Castle show in September 2022. On that day, the Scotsman Drew McIntyre had the chance to wrestle at home in the United Kingdom to try to win the title against Roman Reigns. It was an intense confrontation in which Drew was really close to win. Unfortunately for him, he will not triumph in front of his fans because of an interference by Solo Sikoa. It should be noted that in the match, Austin Theory had tried to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, which he had won a few months before, and which allowed him to have a title match whenever he wanted. But then the famous boxer Tyson Fury, who was sitting in the front row, will hit him and he will therefore not be able to cash it in. A little later there will be a moment that shouldn't have been filmed. After Drew McIntyre's loss, Fury will get into the ring to console him and they will sing together. It was also a way of making sure the fans were happy before going home. Except that the cameraman will film one of the fans in this moment of joy. This one had a t-shirt on which there was written "Better Dad" than Chris Benoit. If you didn't know, Chris Benoit is a wrestler who was at the heart of a scandal in 2007 for killing his wife and daughter before committing suicide. The company had a certain responsibility there, since his brain was ravaged by his many years in the ring with chair shots to the head. Since then, the company has been acting as if he never existed, avoiding mentioning him as much as possible. That's why you won't find anything by typing Chris Benoit on the WWE Network search bar. We imagine they were not delighted to have a t-shirt that referred to this individual all these years later. Obviously, this moment will be cut from the show later, but it is a typically small annoying incident that can happen in the Federation. In 2018, there was a match that had a lot of buzz. The legend Shawn Michaels had come out of retirement to team up with Triple H to challenge The Undertaker and Kane. Just with that, he was spitting on WrestleMania 26, 8 years before, when Michaels had a final masterpiece against The Undertaker. But to make this match in Arabia in exchange for a good amount of money, it no longer mattered. In the end, it's as if this sacrilege has backfired on the Federation. Triple H will seriously injure his pectoral, the match will be considered the worst of 2018, and many Shawn Michaels fans were heartbroken when they saw this guy in the ring who was their idol once. There was also a moment that was broadcast by mistake. At one point, Shawn Michaels was attacking Kane in the corner of the ring. You should know that Kane had always been a terrifying character. For many years he was masked and had impressive supernatural powers.
Oh my God! It's Kane! The demon Kane came up to the ring!
But at that moment, Michaels involuntarily removed Kane's mask. For a few seconds we will see his face and his real haircut. It broke the mystique of his character to see him unmasked, but fortunately we had already seen his face before. We imagine that it would have been a disaster if we had discovered his face this way. Roman Reigns was involved in another moment that was broadcast by mistake. We're on Raw on February 22, 2016. It was a period when he was still the big dog character, a few weeks before facing Triple H for the title at WrestleMania 32. He had a match against Sheamus on that day when the game came to deal with this problem. He will come to beat him up. The two men fight outside the ring until a moment where Triple H grabs Roman's head and crushes him multiple times against the commentator's table. To be precise, he did this gesture no less than 23 times, an impressive figure.
Face first, face first, face!
You can see it. Reigns started bleeding. It won't inspire any pity from Triple H, who will continue this destruction. It enabled to add even more hatred to the rivalry between the two men and to support Roman's revenge on WrestleMania. In the aftermath, the company will release pictures on which we could see the extent of the damage. Roman had to undergo an operation on his nose. In any case, this is the official version of the story that the company will present to the fans. Seeing Triple H's attack from another angle, there was an element that questioned the whole scene. Roman was doing a little sign to commentator Byron Saxton, who was giving him something. Then we won't be able to see Reigns' face clearly, but after that, as if by magic, he was covered in blood. According to some, his colleague gave him a capsule of fake blood. It would make the scene much more impressive and Triple H's aggression would seem even more violent. It is a technique like in cinema to create an illusion. We won't know for sure if the wrestlers really used this strategy that night, but there's no denying that the scene was more impressive thanks to the blood. If you've ever watched a WWE show, you've probably noticed there are regularly scenes during which wrestlers are interviewed in the locker room or simply backstage. They often enable to make the storylines progress.
Wow, one of the best championship matches we've ever seen on Raw.
It's hard not to see it. The people who interview superstars are always smaller than them. If we take a step back, we tell ourselves that this is a good thing. These interviewers are ordinary human beings, while wrestlers are supposed to be impressive characters whom we don't meet every day. Except that in reality there is a hidden technique behind all this, and we could see it in a moment broadcast by mistake. One day Kevin Patrick was interviewing Rey Mysterio and his son before Austin Theory joined them. The latter was always taking selfies with everybody, which he did with Patrick. Because of this funny habit, the cameraman backs away to film the scene. We then see a detail. The interviewer flexes his legs. So he makes himself seem smaller than he really is to give the impression that the wrestlers are much taller than they really are. Naturally, it happens especially when they have to ask questions to wrestlers who are about the same size as them. Personally, I have to say I love this little trick because I think wrestlers have to look impressive. That's wrestling basics. In wrestling, all the actors must constantly communicate. The moves are dangerous. Injuries can easily happen. You have to take care of your colleagues while giving the impression of making them suffer. In this logic, the superstars will talk to each other to make sure they are doing well. If we are really very attentive, we sometimes see them chatting with each other, especially if they lack discretion. We are at the Bragging Rights show in 2009, in which The Undertaker defended his World Heavyweight Championship against CM Punk, Rey Mysterio and Batista. The dead man will catch the animal to do his famous chokeslam. To check that Batista is okay, Taker talks to him, but Big Dave obviously wasn't doing well. Even if it was fun to see this little exchange between these two stars, it obviously shouldn't have been filmed. That's why the Federation will cut this very short moment of the show on its network, the platform on which you can watch all the old shows. At WrestleMania 32, there was an iconic moment in which Shane McMahon jumped off the roof of the cage. It was very impressive and dangerous. Looking back at this edition of the Showcase of the Immortals, this is probably the image that we remember the most. It's important to know that in 1998, Shane's opponent, The Undertaker, was already involved in a similar moment. Against Mankind, he had the most famous Hell in a Cell match of all time, with those moments when Mankind fell violently. These images impacted millions of fans around the world. We remember the shock of seeing Mankind risk his life, the reaction of the spectators in the arena, the comments of the legend Jim Ross, who said they had killed Mankind, that he was broken in half. 18 years later, the Federation wanted to recreate such a memorable moment with Shane McMahon. The problem is that a detail we weren't supposed to see came to take a little magic away from all this. At the moment of Shane's fall, commentator Michael Cole will say the following sentence. It's a sentence that sounds good, which refers to Mankind while expressing shock. It's well-found, almost too well-found. In reality, it wasn't spontaneous, but well-written. By accident, Michael Cole was filmed holding his notebook and reading this comment he had to say at that very moment. Everything was planned. There was a desire to create an iconic moment, but this detail takes away some magic of it, while Jim Ross had naturally been iconic. We end with a moment that is not very well known, but which is absolutely mind-blowing. Even today, it seems crazy that it could have been on television. We are at World Championship Wrestling in October 1998. You should know that it was WWE's competing federation at that time. There was a ratings war between the two companies. On that day, at the Halloween Havoc show, there was a match between Bret Hart and Sting. After Bret's victory, stretcher bearers were supposed to pick up Sting. However, a cameraman seemed to be unaware of this story. As the match was over and the stretcher bearers still had to arrive, he was walking in front of the camera. We put ourselves in the viewers' shoes who are watching the show and who suddenly see a guy walking around in the shot. How crazy. The production manager ended up doing a nervous breakdown and yelling at him.
For a bell here to get some help out, to try to get some attention out.
We can only understand his intense rage. We imagine that after that, this cameraman never came to intrude into the frame again, and that he quietly stayed in his corner. And that was it for those moments broadcast by mistake in the WWE. Seeing all these more or less important incidents, we realize how hard it is to produce a wrestling show. Wrestlers must not get injured. No trick has to be revealed in the open. You must do any mistake, all that live. If we take a step back, we realize the huge risk that the company takes with each broadcast, and we can only salute its professionalism. It's an absolutely incredible accomplishment to produce shows several times a week, and it commands respect. This makes me offer you a debate. In your eyes, is it very important that wrestling shows are live when you watch them? Come and give your opinion. It will be interesting to exchange our points of view in the comments. We can say that wrestling is a hell of a business. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay on the Paradise of Wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?